So today's topic, guys, I'm intrigued to know how this is going to kind of come across, because seeing yourself as a machine when it comes to your training, your performance, like I think a lot of people may not have ever perceived themselves as a machine, and some of the machine-like qualities that we're going to be talking about today. You know how your behaviors actually, the more mechanistic you kind of the approach you have towards these things, your training, actually you could see a great deal more benefits. You're going to be far more efficient. You're going to be far more economical. You're going to be far less injury prone. But there is as I've always said, there's a romantic connection to a lot of these endurance sports, in terms of running, riding, swimming, hiking, climbing, all of the above, myself included. I don't like to often put a label on my sessions. I just want to go out and just be out for a length of time. I want to go out and just be out in the rolling hills. And I'm not a big fan sometimes of, turning Strava on or recording what I'm doing. I just want to be out there. But what I do want to address today is our behaviors want to be mechanistic at times. We do want to perceive ourselves as a formidable machine, and how we behave on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis within our training. If we do see ourselves as a machine and we do find that we are inefficient at times, we are biomechanically kind of struggling at times, how do we go about fixing ourselves? How do we go about approaching ourselves? And I just don't think a lot of people have ever thought this way. I've obviously been trained to think this way because obviously I've coached for so long. I've obviously sports science degrees, and I've spent my entire adult life kind of teaching, coaching, working with all ages and abilities. I think it's just been drilled into me. And whenever I work with anyone, I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, okay, well, this person wants to achieve X from a physiological standpoint. What are we working with? What do we need to be doing to make sure this person is going to be able to tolerate the terrains, the distances, the intensities? Will their body be able to respond to the amount of force, the amount of abuse potentially that your body's about to go through, or you're intending it to go through in this next training block or coming up into an event? So perceiving yourself as a machine, I don't know. I'm intrigued because I think it might be something that you've maybe never thought about, but I think there's a lot of value in it. So let's talk about building an engine. I think a lot of us are very aware that we need to build up this aerobic base. We've got to kind of be able to, over the course of weeks and months, we are looking to increase our time on feet. We are looking to improve our cardiovascular kind of system. A lot of people can just hone in on that, and they are just going to spend their weeks progressively increasing that time. And any type of program can get you there. Self-coaching yourself. But what we find is a lot of people get stuck only working in certain gears. I come across it time and time again where people are struggling with injury. They are struggling to move. They struggle to find the next gear. They don't work with any intensity, and it's because they're not exploring their gearbox. They really aren't aware of how important it is to be able to tap into those different gears. Getting out of first, second gear. I know if you're taking on a ultra distance event, a multi-day event, you're likely never to get out of that first or second gear. But that doesn't mean that you train the entirety of your program in these first or second gears. If you want to build a deeper level of resilience and tolerance in your tendons, ligaments, muscle tissue, bone tissue, we've got to be able to be applying force through our into our physiology, into our bodies. That's going to mean that you're tapping into those higher gears. So your training needs to have intensity. Your running program needs to have quality doses of high intensity work. Now, how we go about that, how we build that in, what does that look like in across your working lifestyle? That's obviously going to be individualized. But your gearbox, your ability to tap into those different gears, to change gear, to be able to be in a steady state kind of zone 2 pace, and then move and then tap into a sprint, to be able to tap into a shoulder to shoulder kind of run to the line, and not break, not blow a hamstring, not blow a calf, blow an Achilles, or you just have never done that. You don't know what an RPE 9 out of 10 is on, within a program. You don't know what those higher echelons of effort look like. There's a fragility to that. I think that's what I see on a day-to-day basis, is where people have never really gone through the gears. Now, within their training program, they're not going through the gears regularly enough, or they're not doing enough strength and conditioning work in the background. They're not fueling appropriately. They're not getting their heads, they're not not planning a week ahead to put themselves in an environment that allows them to tap into those gears. They're not training with other people. They're not going to the track. They're not doing club sessions. There's a lot of power. There's a lot of benefits to be able to manipulate the gears, your gearbox. So being able to kind of have this ability is a huge, I would say is a must within any type of endurance training program, especially if you're someone who was looking to put high volumes or high intensities of work. I think it becomes clearer if you're someone who wants to run short distances, 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons. Like, I'd like to think that intensity is going to be there, that change of gear. But when you go into those longer distances, and you'll find a lot of people don't often get out of gear 2, gear 3 very often. And because they are thinking about they're just thinking about the event itself, or they're just in that, but you want to have those minimal dosages of high intensity throughout the week. Servicing. Would you run a car? Would you run a machine? How long would you run a machine for without putting it in for a service? In the UK it's an MOT, but essentially like it literally makes no sense, right? And it shouldn't make any sense to you. Like if you've run your car for 10,000 miles, that at some point, if it hasn't already told you, it's logical to put it in for a service. My question to most people I work with when I start working with them is like, how often do you service your body? Like, how often are you putting it into an environment where you can just run it through? You can run it through some obvious like mechanical kind of check the mechanics of it. You are going to be putting yourself in an environment where you can look at your mobility, your stability, your ability to absorb force, stabilize, coordinate. This is what a strength and conditioning program will be doing for you. This is what working through a series of running drills on before every session. Like, you're just giving your body an opportunity to see where you're at. How are you moving? We look to install little behaviors around mobility, around warm-ups and recoveries, because they are opportunities. They're literally little short moments within your week to go, right, where am I at? How are my hamstrings? How are my glutes? How are my legs? What's my thoracic, my upper body kind of mobility feeling like? When you jump and land, are you doing that with good power, with good levels of confidence, or not? Do you have little symptoms that you kind of you're not aware of when you're during your training sessions, but then when you isolate them, oh wow, really noticing that I've got a lot less at the moment. This is like this week-to-week maintenance, this week-to-week servicing that you want to be doing. We can't afford to be doing it every 10,000 miles. We need to be doing it weekly, daily, if I'm honest. Like, off the back of a big training weekend, that Monday is for a lot of our SFE crew is an S&C session. But a lot of the time it's you're assessing, you're going through the motions of that warm up, the band work. You're kind of going into that squat, that deadlift, whatever we're doing. But the intention is always about, right, where am I at? How much fatigue have I accumulated over the weekend? Like, how are my knees feeling, my ankles feeling, my hips? I really do question how many of you have that regular service every week. A lot of people think of their strength and conditioning as just like, right, this is my opportunity to get stronger, to get more powerful. No, the primary focus with your S&C is to maintain what you're doing, and to make sure that your body's ticking over nicely, to reinstate good range of motion and mobility into your joints, to engage some of those key muscle groups, to push blood into areas that probably don't get enough attention and potentially being overloaded. So we're trying to support those overloaded areas by putting work into those other supporting muscle groups. Maintenance. Absolutely relentless you want to be with this. You should be servicing your body, giving your body an opportunity on a weekly basis, bi-weekly, 3 times a week at least, where you're just checking in on your body, right, yep, all good. Can I push it a little bit further? That is that mindset. Same thing with a machine, with a car. Like, you are looking to make sure that it's you're putting oil into it. You're putting you're checking the tires, you're checking the engine, whatever you're doing. But you're assessing what you're working with. I question how many people do that periodically. And I'm talking about week to week, because every week you have these expectations that you can do what you did last week and some, but how do you know that? And most people are just going out the door and sussing that out. And then the first 10 minutes of an easy kind of jog, that's not going to be enough. It's not detailed enough. Like, our bodies, we're all harboring our previous injuries, old, we're getting older, we're getting tighter. Like, we want to be just checking in on ourselves on a weekly basis. Those people that are staying on top and preventing injury. They are preventing overload. They're preventing areas of fatigue, accumulation of restriction, tightness, because they're just topping things up all the time. again, just, it's gamification. But you've got to understand, like, you can't just keep pushing a body. You can't just keep expecting your body to tolerate more and more and more without some regular servicing. Yeah. Fuel. What type of fuel we're putting in, the quality of the fuel that we're putting into our bodies. Like, again, like, you're looking at looking at yourself and you're going, right, I expect my body to be able to perform this weekend. I'm looking to go out both, Saturday, Sunday. I'm looking to put in 3 hours on Saturday, 2 hours on Sunday. I want to ride, I want to run. You have these massive expectations. But again, when you go back to this kind of machine-like qualities, it's like, well, do you have enough fuel in the tank to do that? Like, or are you literally on the red line going into the weekend? Or are you still doing what you were doing 6 weeks ago, but yet your volume's now twice as much? Like, there is this innocence, almost borderline ignorance, where you're like, people are still behaving the same with the way they're fueling, but yet they're expecting their body to go further. It's this principle of like, well, you've got the same amount of fuel in the tank, but yet you're expecting to go twice as far with it. And it's like, that's not going to happen. Like, you're going to be running on fumes at some point. You're literally going to be, on the hard shoulder, kind of like struggling or bonking on the side of the road, because you just haven't done what you needed to do. You didn't top up that tank before you went out. And it's just, you are expecting your body to behave with these machine-like qualities. You expect your body to be able to tolerate higher volumes of work, higher intensities of work, higher speeds of work. You want it to take on more challenging terrain. You're looking at, and to do that, like, it's not just about being out there and just being present. You've also got to make sure that you're putting the right quality of fuel. And we could talk about different types of fuel, and I'm not going to go there in terms of car and engine, but you've got to be thinking, like, could I be doing better here with the quality? If I want to go further, potentially I might want to get a premium unleaded fuel in my body. But essentially what you're thinking about is, could I be doing better with the quality of my nutrition? Could I have the nutritional density of my food, the macronutrients that I'm putting into my body, could they be better? And most of the time, yes, they could be. A quick look at your food diary, week 1 versus week 5, versus week 9 of a program. You want to be seeing a progressive improvement in your behaviors around your fueling. Like, that has to be there. That you're more consistent. There's a higher intake that correlates with the higher volumes of intensity you're working at, just like you would be with a machine. Because if you don't service your car, you don't fuel your car, you don't, you're not putting in, you're not aware of how to actually kind of get the most out of your car, in terms of changing gear, etc. How are you expecting to be able to move efficiently across longer distances? How do you expect your body to respond well across those different types of terrain? Because you're not treating it appropriately. You're not looking after it. So it's just, whether you want to be a fast sports car or you want to be a diesel train, have a diesel engine on you, you want to go, there's going to be different qualities that you want to be leaning into. But this machine-like qualities, there's a lot of value in kind of thinking like this at times, because some people are very naive to it, and it's costing them. Because I've had 2 calls this morning with a couple of the SFE crew, and we've got people working towards late 100 right now over here in the UK. We've got somebody else working towards a couple of half marathons. Kind of different training programs, different outcomes, but both conversations today were about, right, we need to, the training's ticking along nicely, but the next 4-8 weeks of our training, we're expecting a lot more. We're looking to push on again. How are we looking with our nutrition? How do we need to bring in a bit more recovery? We're looking at those other areas of that program, because we want more out of the body. But you're never going to get more out of the body if you don't maintain certain behaviors. So the S&C continues all the way through the program. But okay, where else do we need to be upticking? Well, we need to uptick the amount of nutrition we're putting into your body. Do we need to put more carbohydrates in those days leading into the longer weekends? Do we need to get an extra rest day in? And actually, both of these things we were doing with both of them. What the intensities, the volumes that they're both working at are very different. But again, the behaviors are there. But again, it's just like, I'm working with 2 very different machines here. Both want to achieve 2 very different goals. One's running 100 miles, one's running a half marathon as fast as they can. But the principles are there. And I said, the servicing's there. The weekly S&C, the daily S&C, us understanding, like, the manipulation of speed and intensity is going to be there. We've got hill sessions within the ultra distance training program. We've got work, we've got long distance steady state work. We've got work around, like, interval training, we're tapping into that. With the half marathon, we've got them up to 5 days a week. We've got road work, we've got, club work. We've got this different type of work where you're putting these people into different environments, but we're training these like machine-like qualities. They're working through their different gears. We're exploring their fueling. Could it be better? Could we be doing more here at the right times? We're exploring how we can make sure that they are just like they've got little calf issues and hamstring issues. Right. What else could we be doing within their S&C of their pre-run, post-run behaviors to keep on top of those little issues? But can you understand, like, this is like I am treating them like machines to a degree because they want their body to respond like a machine down the line. They want to be able to keep turning up and replicating certain behaviors, certain performances, and some. But to do that, this is where we want to be. We can't be too naive in what we are looking to achieve. There's a lot of romanticism around kind of running and riding and things where people just want to keep doing more, but then they're not really putting any effort into any of those other supporting behaviors. We have to, guys, because we'll constantly getting caught out if we don't have like consistent conversations around those other areas of your training. Whether you respond well to that type of narrative where we're talking about you as a machine, all I want you to understand is how important it is to be thinking more than just a training session, training program. We've got to be considering all the other variables that are going to allow you to maintain your levels of consistent performance. And it's always this kind of machine-like qualities, which is going to allow you just to keep turning up week after week, month after month, year after year. And that's what we're all looking for. We all would love to be able to sustain a nice, active lifestyle where we can peak for certain events throughout the year and do that year after year without any long-term injury. But what is it going to take to do that? It is going to take some machine-like behaviors to do that. And, some people will learn that very quickly. Some people take longer to learn that, but it's there. I like to think it's relatively obvious, but it can take time to nurture. And that's obviously what I'm doing on a daily basis with people in terms of their coaching. You're nurturing these qualities. You're kind of reframing it. You're gamifying it, in terms of, right, why are we looking to lean more into your nutrition at the moment? Why are we why do we need to bring in more recovery? Why do we need to double down on your S&C right now? Because these are the things that potentially no one's been, you haven't been held accountable to in the past. You've just focused on the training, the volume, the intensities. It's not enough. It never will be. Like just following a one-dimensional training program it works for a time and then it starts to fail you. Your body starts to break down because you're not thinking about how to sustain those behaviors. And it comes from not thinking about these other qualities. All right, guys, enough from me. Just some food for thought. Speak to you soon.